Welcome, welcome, my friends. We'll let everybody come in and grab a virtual seat. I'm sure folks brought their lunch. Enjoy your lunch. You're not on screen, so it's all good. You didn't even have to brush your hair or put on pants or anything.
No pants required for this.
No pants required. It's all that. That's the beauty of webinar. The
Yeah.
only people who have to clean up are us. That's it. We got to clean up.
But they don't know if we're wearing pants or not.
That we do not need to wear pants, and that's really our secret. That is our secret. All right, gang, it is 12:02. I'm going to begin. We'll welcome new folks as they arrive. Welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the Author, not at the Pyramid Club. So here we are virtually from wherever you are zooming in. It is a beautiful day here in suburban Philadelphia. I'd love to know where everybody is zooming in from. So if you would share that with us in the chat. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to introduce, since I'm talking about the chat, my good friend Lysandra. Lysandra is our chat room ambassador. She is here to generate conversation in chat, capture the high points of our conversation, and in general, make sure that Karyn and I do not get so caught up in conversation that we lose sight of questions and comments in the chat. Lysandra, tell us about you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Welcome, everyone. I am joining from Philadelphia. If you're familiar with the area, I am in the northwest section in Mount Airy, where we can see some trees and the Wissahickon over here. So, welcome. I am so excited for today's uh, session of Meet the Author with Karyn. I'm looking forward to a bit of levity. So, I'm looking forward to that. I love these events because I am a passionate learner. Curiosity is my superpower, and I am excited to share this space with you. I'll be off camera for the majority, but I will be engaging in the chat. So feel free to drop a note, question, comment, insight in the chat, and I'll go ahead and amplify that. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. And Lysandra and I just had a beautiful lunch. I'm still reeling from our beautiful lunch at Tiffin in King of Prussia. If you haven't been there, I'm going to give Tiffin a shout out. Amazing Indian food.
Ooh.
So good. Yes, yes. So, and I never really give an introduction for myself, but I'm going to say I am Teresa Hummel-Krallinger, and my company is High Five Performance. I'm sitting here in lovely downtown North Wales, Pennsylvania. I work with organizations to create places where people want to work. And as a side job, I have, well, it's really a side hobby. I have Meet the Author. I've had Meet the Author for 11 years, which is insane that it's like how fast that time went. But I have met over 200 authors in 11 years, which is why I keep doing this, because my circle of thought leaders grows and grows and grows, and it is amazing. We have one event coming up that I want to not only announce and share, but brag about. I want to brag about this one. September 25th. Guess who finally is publishing her book? Oh my goodness. Yeah, my book is finally coming out, and I will be joined by three other authors September 25th at the Pyramid Club, 6 p.m. I know Lysandra is thoughtfully putting some links in the chat if you'd like to join us. We'd love to see you there. It is all about career, all about career. And we'll have a career coach. We have two career coaches. We have a gentleman who wrote about it's really a memoir and how to be successful. And I've got a real how-to on how keep employment for a lifetime. So I hope to see you there. All right, now we're ready. Karyn. Karyn is our guest today. Karyn Buxman is she's a neurohumorist, a speaker. She's also, if anybody needs to have any health issues taken care of, she's also a nurse. She's also a nurse. And I met Karyn. I always share, like, how did I find these people? Karyn is friends with Dre. Dre is from the Michigan NSA chapter. And when I met Dre, he said, "Oh, Teresa, I have to introduce you to Karyn. You need to know her." Whenever anybody says that, they're right. They're right. And they made the connection. I reached out to Karyn. I said, "Listen, you've got a book, you've got a couple books. Would you like to join me?" So, Karyn, thank you for joining us today. I know we're going to spend some time talking about Lead with Levity, strategic humor for leaders. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, wherever two or more are gathered in the name of humor, I want to be there. So thank you for inviting me and shout out. Thanks, Dre.
Yes,
It's always
yes.
wonderful when you can connect people who will benefit from knowing one another. I love connecting folks. So always appreciate that.
Well, I think that's the foundation for success
Yeah.
is really just first you have to be good at something. You have to be really good at something. But then knowing people is the next step. That's how we get opportunities. It's how we find information. It's how we get tips and tricks on how to do things and solve problems. So, what prompted you to write this book, Lead with Levity? I mean, here you are coming from a background were in nursing. What
Yes.
prompted you to write this book?
I know what some of your audience is thinking. "Ah, Teresa, another neurohumorist. Ah, come on now. Come on." You know, but I have been researching humor for over 35 years, so you don't have to. And I will tell you it is true what E.B. White once said, that humor can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are of interest to only the pure scientific mind. So I've been studying this just forever. And
Yeah.
when I first started researching this, which was in grad school, this was my thesis, my research project. I was coming at this as a nurse from the health and well-being angle.
Okay.
Uh, I discovered very quickly along the way that people thought I was funny. Who knew? So, I was doing a lot in terms of entertainment and health and wellness, stress management, and other kinds of things. But as I continued in this growth mindset, learning is like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't get enough input. I had this epiphany that humor doesn't have one purpose, it has three. And one of the
Okay.
reasons why people are a little hesitant sometimes to embrace humor into their work, their life, is because they think of humor as entertainment.
Mm,
And we love making people laugh. We absolutely love making people laugh, and people love to laugh. But unless you're an entertainer, it's not about making other people laugh. If you're an entertainer, you measure your success by how much they laugh.
yes.
Realize the two other purposes were influence and well-being. And with well-being, when you want to help somebody be healthier and you're using humor, therapeutic humor, it's not about how much we make that other person laugh. It's about the quality of their health and well-being. Then, I realized that it was also influence. And again, when we use humor to influence another person, whether that's educating and leading, inspiring, motivating, negotiating, informing, any of those, it's not about how much do we make that other person laugh. It's what is the quality and quantity of the relationship? What relationships, and did we achieve our desired outcome? And as I started to dive in more and more to the role of humor and influence, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so important for leaders to
Yes.
understand. And so often, here's the three things that I hear. Is I don't want to offend anybody.
Mm-hmm.
What if they
Mm-hmm.
don't take me seriously? And what if I'm not funny? And
Yes.
so this is where this whole book came from. That was a long answer. You give a speaker a
Yeah.
microphone and
But
yeah,
Karen, that's why I know this hour is going to fly by
it's
because
gonna fly by.
this
It's
is
gonna,
what speakers, well, because you have taken a deep dive in this topic. You
and I'm
got a
so
whole lot
passionate.
in your head that you
Yeah,
want to share. Now, I love that you brought up influence
yeah,
because, John Maxwell has always said leadership is influence.
yes,
That's what it is about. It is about leading and
yes.
motivating and getting things done. How show us what is the connection between humor and influence? I thought it was just having a gift of gab and having the right words and what how does humor tie in there?
There is so much. And actually, I spend 8 weeks on this in a master class called The Missing Piece. But let's look
Wow.
at a couple of these things. One is with leadership, how important is connection? If who I'm trying to remember who said, you don't want to look behind if you're the leader and you turn around and there's nobody there. Then, you're not a
That's a
leader.
problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. And so we find that humor, and again, I dive into the brain, and this is what really took this a quantum leap for me is when I started understanding the intersection of humor and the brain. Because one of the many things that happens is that one of the chemicals that's released because of this cascade of neurotransmitters is oxytocin, which is
Mm,
the also cuddle hormone, a
yes.
relationship hormone. It makes people feel closer. So, so with this we have the connection piece. It also helps lower resistance.
Yes.
Now, I want to say here that is if you're using humor as a tool and not a weapon.
Yeah.
Humor can
Yes.
be weaponized. And if you want to dive into that a little bit in a minute, we can do that. But when you're using it as a tool, we are lowering the resistance. And when you lower the resistance, then you're going to be more effective in this leadership role. What we have right now is a world with brains on fire. Whether you're talking about global climate, political climate, work climate, relationships, and all of these other kinds of things. There is so much going on in our brains that we are actually losing cognitive capacity.
Hmm.
This overwhelm, this stress makes us dumber. There was a
Oh my
study in
gosh.
the UK that showed
Preach, Karen, preach.
we
I'm
could lose
living it
up
right
to,
now.
yeah, we can lose up to 10 IQ points. I'm telling you, as a blonde from Missouri, I can't afford to lose any more IQ points. Now, I, I'm not going to say that moving out of Missouri made me smarter. That is not the case. However, humor has helped make me smarter, or what it's done
Yes.
is helped me regain that lost cognitive capacity that I lose when I'm in overwhelm or I lose when I'm in stress. So it's lowering resistance, it's strengthening the connection. As I mentioned, improving our cognitive capacity. A very beloved NSAer, dear friend of mine, Mark S.A. Smith, he passed away way before his time. But we had this amazing conversation about the fact that humor helps connect the disconnected dots right off the bat. That's what humor is about, taking things that don't go together quite exactly and having
Right.
that moment of aha, and hopefully that feeling of mirth. But we connect the disconnected dots, and in this we have neuroplasticity, which gives us this increased cognitive capacity. When we have this increased cognitive capacity, we are better able to problem solve and envision the future, which is a leader's greatest tool. And
Yeah.
so we call this the cognitive capacity cascade. And so using this is just, again, it helps deal with conflict. It helps with resolution. There's so many ways that humor can help in leadership. But yeah, you can tell I get a little excited about this.
Yeah, well, because you're at the deep end of the pool with this, and I'm
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm 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 bringing us all in the deep end with you because we want to pick up some tips. So, as a leader, when
mhm,
you say, "Oh, Teresa, use humor to influence, use humor to be the better leader." So, first of all, the thing that you said up front, people think they're not funny. Well, I'm
mm,
not funny. So, do you want me to tell joke? Like, what is it you want me to do that will infuse humor? I mean, I'm
yeah,
thinking to myself, say, I'm a comedian, so I can't help myself.
yeah,
Uh, Sometimes at wrong times I'm being funny,
yeah,
but leaders eh, sometimes like that's digging deep for them.
yes,
Are they
yes.
memorizing jokes? What are they doing here, Karen?
Okay, this is great because as a leader, it's more important to see funny than it is to be funny.
Okay,
People, again, they think that their role using humor is about making the other person laugh, but this is not necessarily the case. So, partly when I want leaders to use humor, some of this is for themselves, It is exposing themselves
Yeah.
to more humor. I learned by accident. Years ago, I was coaching a gentleman from Australia, high ticket salesman. His tickets were 5 grand and above. And he said, I want to be funny spontaneously because we
Mm,
know that humor is also really important in sales. We can dip into that if you so desire. But I started working with him, had him send me some video and things, and much to my surprise, he's delivering lines and the audience is laughing. And occasionally an audience member would throw him a line that was just very, very funny. And so I came back to him and I said, are you aware that you had some great laugh lines? And one of my mottos is lather, rinse, repeat. If you got something that works
yes.
someplace, you're going to find a way to use that again. And he was like, really? And I said, and this lady, she threw you this line and I shared it. And I said, oh my gosh, you could either say a woman in my audience or steal it, just use that
Yep.
line for future audiences. And he's like, I didn't even hear that. And as we dug deeper, he said,
Mm.
I'm very serious. My parents were very serious. My wife is deadly serious. He goes, I have 3 kids. 2 out of 3 are incredibly serious, except for the third. He has Down syndrome. He is just a bright light and laughing all the time.
Oh,
And so what I realized was I can give leaders funny lines, I can give them funny bits and funny stories. But if they haven't wired their brains to see where
yeah.
the opportunity lies, it's not much use to them. And so, first of all, is the nourishing of your own sense of humor. So you start recognizing these opportunities that are all around you. Many times people will say, but you don't understand. There's nothing funny in my life. There's nothing funny happening in my life.
Oh,
And
all around you.
and I say, if that is your belief, that is your reality.
Yes.
Because your brain is going to show you more of that.
Yes.
Your reticular activating system is saying, oh, you think there's no humor anywhere, so we're not going to show you any humor.
Yeah.
For leaders, flip that. What am I missing? What's
Yeah.
funny?
There is humor everywhere.
Humor
Everywhere.
is everywhere.
Yes.
And some of it's very inappropriate. As a nurse, I love inappropriate humor, but I can't stop seeing humor.
Yeah.
There is not a day goes by, even when I'm having a bad day, that I don't see something that can at least give me an inner smile or chuckle. And so, part of this is your personal mindset. And if we look at Cialdini's work, I'm sure you're familiar with Robert Cialdini and his book Influence and Persuasion.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
one of the things he talked about also was reciprocity. And so many times, you give somebody something and they want to give you something back. If you give somebody something that is a positive comment or a light joke or something, chances are they're going to give you something back. I share humor
Yes.
with another person. They're likely to share that back with me. There's also the affiliation. If I can make somebody else look funny or smart, I am now seen within that, and it's like
Sure.
if you are a leader and you ask another person on your team, share the funniest thing one of your customers ever said. And
Yes.
that person shares it, they get a laugh. But you also get a little bit of cred for that because you recognized the importance of humor. I'm
Yes.
gonna throw in something else here. My youngest son, Adam, studied with Second City for
Oh, wow. How
years.
fun.
Oh, it was a riot. And he was a starving artist with sights set on SNL. And as I'm feeding him at a restaurant one day because he's starving, I said, if this doesn't work out, and I'm just saying, because it probably will, but if it wouldn't,
Yeah.
is this improv stuff gonna help you in anywhere else in your life? And
Absolutely. Yes.
and he said, Mom, here's the deal. He goes, because he was supporting himself by being a waiter and a bartender. And he said, I always get the best tips because I'm the funniest waiter that there is. He said, but when I studied improv, my perspective switched. and I started seeing each table as a troop. There's always somebody at a table who thinks they're funny too. He said, Mom, when I'm funny, I get amazing tips. He goes, but when I can make somebody look funnier than me, he goes, oh my gosh, it just blows the doors off. And so, people being considered funny is something that we value. We
It is.
value a funny person. They have this magnetism. It's almost a charisma. And
Yes.
whether you get that by being the funny person directly or by indirectly sharing that. And there's lots, we're going to go over lots of other ways, but that's one of the ways that a leader can get around that piece of, but I'm not funny. So don't worry about it. When they say I'm not funny, I go, "Oh, great."
Right, because it is a flipping of the switch in the head of perspective.
Yeah.
I Karen, there was a time, and I speak for a living too. There was a time when I was in my corporate job and I was behind the scenes and I was asked to give a presentation to a large audience. And I said, no, that's not who I am. Do you see how that mindset was keeping me in? I
Yes.
don't give presentations. I don't get up in front of people and speak. Well, my boss, who was very funny, she was, well, it may not have been who you were, but it's who you're going to be now because you're going to give that presentation and you're going to do it. And in that
Right, right,
moment,
right,
I
right.
had incredible disdain for her in that moment. But what a life shifting moment to put me in front of an audience and be prepared, and now I make my living at it. So the same is true with what you're saying about humor. If we say, I'm not funny, it's not possible for me, then in fact, that is true for you. But if you flip the switch and say, it's possible to be funny,
Yeah.
and I'm going to focus on ways I can be, boom. You mentioned sales, and all of us are in sales. Even if you're not selling
Everybody.
a product, we're selling an idea, we're selling
Right.
something. How can we use humor to sell?
One of the great gifts of humor is that it creates likability.
Yes.
And we all know in sales, people buy from someone they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
That is another important piece, also, is the trust factor. So
Yeah.
here is something that's
Huge.
a very, very uh, incredible tool for salespeople. And if you really think about it, some of the greatest salesmen you'll ever meet, are they not funny? I mean, they have learned intuitively
Yeah.
what others, I think, could harness if they were intentional. And that is that this, this bringing together, this connection piece. Victor Borges said laughter is the shortest distance between two people. It does bring together. You can create this sense of trust. And one of the simpler ways to create this trust is a bit of self-effacing humor.
Yeah.
You know, don't go overboard. I tell
Right.
people, make fun of your actions and not of who you are, because you want people to think you made a mistake, not that you are a mistake, you know? And so when you do this, when you are sharing a bit of self-effacing humor, what you're really doing at a neuron, at a brain level, is you are showing a little bit of vulnerability. Brene
Yep.
Brown, shout her
Yep.
out. And with this vulnerability, you are saying, I made a mistake, or there was an error. It's funny, but I made an error. Um, I'm showing some vulnerability, and this other person sees this as, okay, they are safer or safe
Yes.
because they have
Isn't that
shared this
interesting?
vulnerability. And you create this likability, you create this vulnerability, you create this trust. And as you move forward and you begin learning more things about this other person, good salespeople always know to be watching for cues
Mm-hmm.
to build upon. I just want to take that up a notch and look at how can I find funny cues that I can build upon. Yeah, I listen for their conversations. I look, in terms of what's in their environment. And then also just weave in conversationally things like, oh, who's the funniest person in your family? Or other kinds of questions that evoke a little bit of information about humor. What was your favorite game as a kid? Or what did you like to play? A little bit of reminiscence in there. What's the craziest thing? I love asking questions like, what's the craziest thing one of your customers has said? Or, Uber drivers, what's the wildest ride you've
Oh,
ever had?
wow. You'll get great stories.
Another line that I get great answers with, you know, what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten? I mean, these are just conversation starters that just lend themselves to funny material. And you don't have to be, again, you're not trying to be an entertainer. You're not trying to just make them fall down funny, and you don't have to have six
Yes.
LPMs or laughs per minute. This is just about opening the door, creating vulnerability, putting in a little bit of trust, and then moving forward.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Lysandra, are you queuing us up for a question?
I am, and this is a
Oh my,
perfect segue because I feel like the conversation's naturally going there. We have a question. If you are serious and literal, how do you become funny? And there's a call out to self-confidence and comfort playing a huge role in giving yourself permission to be funny. And I feel like I was hearing those threads of authenticity,
Yes.
demonstrating a little vulnerability, creating a space that's safe for that. Can you say more to like how you could
Yeah.
leverage, access that humorous part of yourself when your natural space
serious.
is so serious, literal, and
Yes.
you want to be mindful of self-confidence and comfort consideration.
I love, love, love that question. Thank you, Lysandra, and whoever asked that question.
It was Lisa Schwartz, my good friend
Lisa.
Lisa Schwartz, who is a wonderful L&D professional and is also a really great career coach.
Lisa, you're brilliant. So, this is very much about authenticity, and not trying to be something you're not. And again, when you say, how do you become funnier? I let the funny come naturally. And again, I promise you that if you start immersing yourself in humor on a regular basis,
Yes.
I spend, some people put on suntan lotion in the beginning of the day as, to ward off uh, harmful rays. I put on 20 minutes of humor every morning. And that is to kind of protect me from all of the stuff, but also it exposes me to what is in the culture. It exposes to me what other people are finding funny. I'm looking for memes. I'm looking for stories. I'm looking for jokes. I will, a little side note here in terms of, how do I get funnier? I am really cautious about jokes. I think great salespeople, they got tons of them. And I think it's great for everybody to have one or two, dad jokes, dumb jokes, benign jokes. The challenge with jokes is that they always have a target, and it's an aggressive kind of humor. So we'll kind of put that off. But starting to think about, I encourage the people that I coach and in my courses to keep a story list.
Yes.
And just what are the things that made you laugh? And as you keep this and it starts to grow, mine started as just a list. It became three columns on a page, and then it became pages and pages and pages. And I recognize so many of the stories just by the words at this point because I'm a speaker. But I encourage people to keep journals and to go back and review those every once in a while. And the more you immerse yourself, the more naturally, authentically, this comes into being. And what is most personal is most universal. And that's true in terms of humor too. Stories about kids, stories about parents, stories about spouses, stories about work, being late to work, the stupid traffic, all these kinds of things. Other people, the reason they find it funny is because they can relate to it.
Yes.
What are your most universal stories? I was flipping through one of my journals just because every once in a while it's like both to entertain myself and to look for material. I found a story I had journaled. My son is now 40. I was a child bride. And, but when he was like 4, I took him to the barber shop, and he, hops up in that little chair that has the little bar across it so he can sit up nice and high. And I'm sitting there looking at the barber and smiling. And the barber turns to my son and says, "So, Adam, you know, what kind of haircut do you want today?" And he says, without hesitating, "Give me a flat top." He's got these long, beautiful locks. And the barber kind of took a breath and looked at me and then looked at Adam, and he goes, "Is that what your mom wants?" And he goes, "Why would my mom want a flat top?" And it was just that spontaneous little bit of humor. But anybody who's ever had that sassy kid or that child or been exposed. I mean, everybody that's here is either has a child, been around a child, or was a child. So these are the kinds of ways that you can evolve very naturally in terms of share your humor, seek from others, grow your repertoire.
And what's nice is, as you mentioned earlier, 6 laughs per minute. Like a comedian is under pressure because they have to get a certain number. And actually, six isn't even a lot in the grand scheme of things if you go through and you count them. But the beauty of just being a leader or a person who is at work, if you get a laugh once every half hour, that's huge.
Oh, it's huge.
That is absolutely huge. Some of it, I think, just when you are comfortable in your own skin,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to use humor. I think when we're very kind of consumed about how we look and what people are thinking, it I don't know, it kind of tightens us up. It's
Yeah.
like humor is like a muscle. And I took a stand-up comedy class back in 2002. So it's been 23 years. 2002. And like Lisa's question, I considered myself a very corporate chick, very serious and literal. I took the comedy class not to be a comedian, but develop techniques for infusing humor. And
Yeah.
Karen, what it did for me is just what you're saying. Now I'm looking for things to be funny, whereas before that wasn't on my radar. But when you're in comedy, yeah,
Yeah. And then you get to a point, don't you, Teresa, that you don't even have to look for it. It
right.
just
It's
kind of like
there.
falls in front of you.
It's
I'm
there.
at a clothing store in a dressing room trying on a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
And the woman in the dressing room next to me, I never saw her face. But all of a sudden I hear her moan loudly and say, "Good Lord, if this dress were any tighter, it would fit me like a mammogram." That was the funniest thing I'd heard all day. I
Write that
stopped
down.
and I did. I wrote it
Yes.
down. Now, here is another important lesson. As funny as that was, I totally forgot about it
Well,
until
because
until a few weeks later when I was digging in the bottom of my bag, found that piece of paper and was like, "Oh my God," and then I put it on my list. So you have to keep track of these things. But those are the kinds of things that are happening all around us. And if we haven't wired our brains to tune into that, it's not that it's not happening. It's not that they aren't there. It's just simply that your brain hasn't wired that way. And it's because your brain gives you more of what you focus on. How
yes.
often are you scrolling on your phone, even doom scrolling or whatever, but you're looking through texts and emails and news and all this other stuff? How often are you spending some time looking for what you really want more of? What do
Yes.
you want more of? And if
What
you
you
want
focus on grows,
what
right?
we focus on grows. It's so simple. It's so
Yeah.
simple. It's absurd.
It's
But seek from others and grow this. And in terms of, you don't have to be funny. Let it come naturally. If people don't laugh, let it be motivational. Let it be informational. It doesn't matter because you're not trying to entertain them. But the more you do it intentionally and consistently,
yeah. You
intentionally and consistently, do
create new pathways in
create new
and you know
pathways.
this that it's all about the neuroplasticity. The more you use it, the better you get. You
You get
validated this, Karen, this morning. So I have a a little running note called comedy ideas. Because, Karyn, that thing that happened to you in the dressing room is gold, but if you don't write it down, I don't know about anybody else, maybe it's just me. I'm not gonna hold on to that. And I'll be like, there was something really amazing that happened in the dressing room, but I can't remember. So
Yeah.
I write stuff down. So today at 10:40 a.m., I wrote in my comedy ideas log, the look, mean adult stare. You wouldn't act up in public or your mom would end your career right there in aisle 4. So I ever use this? I don't know. But I've captured the idea. So when I go back and I'm writing a speech, I'm getting ready to do something new in comedy, I check out my comedy ideas to say,
Yeah.
"Ooh, let's harvest something that we know already is funny and work on it." So I love that. Keep a list of stories, keep a list of
Yeah.
funnies.
And to your point, so much humor comes from pain. One of the theories of humor is
Yes.
the relief theory. And so if you got a lot of crap going on in your life, woohoo, you've got material. It's that ability to twist and turn and play with your pain. My friend Judy Carter, who wrote the Comedy Bible, said,
Love Judy Carter.
and she's asking, what's broken, what's weird,
Yes.
what's all of these kinds of questions about those are the things that are going to be some of your best material. And again, if it's something that other people can relate to, it's even funnier. And so build upon that. My best stories come from things that were stressful at the time. And then use these. How can you then, as a leader, how can you segue this into lessons?
Yeah.
Because one of the gifts of humor is reframing. And that's a very important skill
Yes.
to have. The challenge with reframing is that it takes a lot of cognitive capacity. But when you can reframe with humor, because humor is a reframe, it's a shortcut. Um, my oldest son, David, has given me a beautiful grandson
Oh,
who is about 12 years old now and is autistic. And he understands a lot of vocabulary, but he doesn't speak much, and his writing is a little difficult to read sometimes. And my son and I, David, we FaceTime every weekend. And one weekend I was like, "How goes it?" And he said, "Well, we've got a challenge here. Zarek found a magic marker and he has been labeling things in the house. He said the front door now says exit. His bunk says up. His door says Zarek. Ayla's bunk says down. And he's like, everywhere there is this graffiti, but we can't find the marker. He's hidden it. And, I'm finding this mildly amusing. So a couple weeks later, as we're FaceTiming, I said, "Oh, I forgot to ask, how's it going with Zarek?" And he goes, "Well, the bad news is the graffiti still continues." He said, "But the good news is his penmanship is really getting good." And so it was this wonderful reframing. And
that is so wonderful.
you tell that story as a leader and then say, okay, for us, the bad news is X, but the good news is Y. You've
Yes.
made it a little softer, you've lowered the resistance, you've got them leaning in a brain toward perspective instead of a brain back perspective. And now you're able to slip in and help them reframe a situation, which is great leadership skill.
Karyn, that's a great comedic technique of the bad news is, or the good news is this, the bad news is this. What like that is a great exercise, one of many that helps to get your brain to think that way. Even
Yeah.
a technique like a three-part setup, rule of three. This is what I give to my folks that are I am not funny, Teresa. I cannot tell a joke. I am not funny. They can do three-part setup.
Yeah.
I open a presentation. So I have a room. I have like 400 people in the room, pharmaceutical professionals, very left brain, analytical, very serious, smart people. And I asked them, how many of you have sat through a boring presentation? Every hand goes up. How many of you sat through a boring presentation from a really smart person? Every hand goes up. How many of you are the smart person delivering the really boring presentation? So do you see that
Yeah,
little left? Anybody,
triple.
anybody can do that three part. Anybody. And is it a huge laugh? Are they bent over? No, but it is that moment of levity, that unexpected moment. Anybody can do that. What are some techniques? Not that we want people to be comedians. Are there
Yeah.
techniques that you teach leaders in addition to storytelling?
Well, you've hit upon a great one, which is
Rule of
triples,
three.
timing. It just going through, if it's a presentation, I have them go through and I look for certain words that could be made funnier, just certain word choices. Yeah.
Yes.
Here was a great lesson I learned from Michael Haig, who is writes screenplays and also teaches the art of story. And he said, be wedded to the truth, but not married to the facts. And so, a lot of times I'll tell people they're like, oh, my dog did blah, 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 blah. I said, well, what if we said Chihuahua? Because Chihuahua is a funny word.
Great.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, but it wasn't a Chihuahua.
It
Your house
doesn't matter.
doesn't know. Yeah. It's like, it
Doesn't
was a
matter. Yes.
dog. You know, it was a dog. To funny things up with words to, for leaders, again, they have the option to use visuals. They
Yes.
have the option to use props. I've always got props and things in my office, and I love it that people give me things like, somebody gave me the frog because of the
Oh,
EBY. Even just again for their own demeanor, things that convey that they have a sense of humor. The physician who introduced me, who looked like he had a paisley tie, but when you look at it, there's little cartoon characters creeping
yes.
out from behind the paisley. George Bush Sr. loved funny socks. And
I was just thinking a crazy sock really is a statement.
it's a statement. It's a
Yes.
statement, and to be thinking intentionally ahead of time about what kinds of things might lend them to something. I love to start meetings in a brain toward state. So I'm always starting with some kind of a question that gets people leaning in, like how
Yes.
many fictional dog characters can you name? All right, turn to the person beside you, go. And it's like, Lassie and Scooby and blah 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 blah. Now you've got this fun energy and people get a
Yes.
chance to laugh and to chime in and to do these kinds of things. um, convey this in your marketing material or in convey outwardly to people, because people again want to do business with someone they know, like, and trust. The
Yes.
people, whether you're a leader or a lover, a sense of humor is rated as among people's top three traits that they are seeking. So even if you're not funny, it's just to convey that you have a sense of humor. Again, if I could
Yes.
just get across, you don't have to be funny, but how can you convey that you have a sense of humor? What kinds of props and things can you have around your office that convey that? Or what kinds of stories are you going to be telling? What kinds of exercises can you be doing in your meetings that show that you condone and even enc- encourage this?
Yes.
I did a presentation for a group of C-suite one time in Chicago years ago on the importance of humor in leadership, and they loved it. They said, "Oh my gosh, we want to have you back, and we're going to have you speak for 3 days to everybody from middle management down to the custodians." Spoke my brains out for 3 days. And when I went through the evaluations, one of the things that really struck me was the comments such as, "This was so wonderful. I just wish my boss could have heard it." So what we find here is that, it's like go forth, be funny, and improve your attitude, or firings will continue until morale improves. That kind of a mindset to
Yes.
encourage. The other thing is, I've developed 7 competencies, because again, one of the concerns is, well, what if I offend someone? And we do find
Sure.
that a lot of
So we
humor,
have to be careful.
we have to be careful. And people are like, oh gosh, that's woke or whatever. You know what? It's like, if I say, for entertainment, anything goes, because do what you want. People, either they gave their approval or permission by buying a ticket or turning on the show, and they can always turn it off or walk away. Rules are different for influence and well-being. That's just the way it is. And
Yeah.
so with these rules, you do want to be concerned if you're going to offend somebody. You do want to be concerned if you're going to cross the line. There's a lot of reasons for that I'm not going to go into, but some of them include lawsuits. So
Right.
um, a couple of things that might be helpful for people here.
Yeah.
One is um, psychological safety. You don't One of the favorite forms of humor that people love is sarcasm. Who doesn't love a little bit of sarcasm?
Right.
The root word of sarcasm means to tear the flesh. It's a
Mm.
very aggressive kind of humor.
So
When you share it in a relationship where there is a lot of trust, it is banter, it is fun, it is
yes.
play. But when you are using sarcasm where there is no trust, now you're weaponizing your humor.
Yes.
And as
Yeah.
a leader, I don't encourage people to weaponize their humor.
Yeah.
The other mistake that I see a lot of leaders make is in the relationship, the rapport that they have with the other person. The better your rapport, along with that goes the trust factor, the riskier your humor can be. The challenge is that sometimes people think that trust equity is higher, you
Yeah.
know, than it really is. And it's equity. It's like, you don't really know the value of your house until somebody actually puts money on the line. You don't really know the equity of this trust in terms of your humor exchange until you put your humor on the line. But a lot of times people think, oh, well, she's a Phillies fan, and we like the same baseball team, so she's going to like the same political jokes that I like.
Oh no.
And it's like,
Don't even.
don't make those assumptions.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't even.
you want to make sure that relationship is strong. And the question to ask yourself when you're using this humor is, does this move the relationship forward?
Yeah. That's a
Doesn't
great lens.
don't don't.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, when in doubt, leave it out. Like, if your intuition is telling you, wait, this might be, like, it's not worth the risk.
I can
Find
tell you from
something
experience.
else.
Yes, let me save you from yourself. If you have that little voice going, maybe
Yes.
I didn't share this,
Right.
listen to that voice.
Yes.
The other option is self-efface.
Yeah.
You know,
That
put the forward.
99% of the time,
Yeah,
you are safe.
yeah, yeah,
That is definitely the way to
yeah,
go. I mean, clearly, common sense comes into play here. And you're not on a comedy stage. Comedy stage,
yeah,
you can get risky. Even there, I don't take risks.
yeah,
Even there, I want to appeal to everyone in that room. So I avoid anything political. I avoid anything that um, is a hot button topic that is divisive.
yeah.
There is so much that we all have in common and we all can find funny. Like my little comedy idea I wrote about your parent giving you the look
Yeah.
back in the day. Like we all know, like, now that I'm an adult, I'm like, "Oh my God, now I can have the look."
Yes.
I had kids on the train that were misbehaving and I thought, "I'm giving them the mean adult stare." And they knew, like, it had words without words. So, like, those kind of things are funny for all of us because we've all lived it. We've all lived it. We've
The
all lived
relatability.
traffic. We've
What
all
is
lived,
universal is
you
most
know.
universal. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
So, what I'm hearing is the mindset shift is probably foundational for all of this. Looking for the funny, knowing that it's out there and kind of harvesting it, keeping a list, keeping a
Yeah.
story list, using self-effacing humor, and really it's almost like exercise, right? If you don't use a muscle for a while, it's really kind of hard. But then once you start to work on it, it gets stronger. So humor's like a muscle. And
It is.
if you play with it and make it a point, you were talking about like a morning practice, have a
Yeah.
morning practice of humor, whether it be writing down ideas, maybe watching something funny. What are some other tips that we can do to kind of wrap up the humor piece of our
Yeah.
conversation here?
Yeah, I want to just say yes, yes, yes to everything that you're saying. And I'm what comes to mind is a friend of mine who is a best-selling author, and New York Times bestseller, great speaker, blah blah blah, and is very open about her depression and at times, suicidal thoughts. And I made a commitment to
Oh,
my friend years ago that I would start sending her something funny every day. And I many times would not hear back. But um and at first I thought, oh, what a good friend I am, because I'm sending her this humor every day. But what I realized later was I was getting more from it probably than she, because it was reframing
I
my
was gonna say, look at your attention. Your attention
now.
was,
I
I
give my
need something
attention to this.
funny every day.
And then, over time she starts sending funny back. And a year or two later, she is a chair of a conference. And she's usually one to kind of like sit on the sidelines unless she's a keynoter. But when she got up, she was just like dropping these funny little anecdotes and lines constantly. And people were like, "Ah, I never knew you were this funny." And she was like, neither did I. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's because now it has
Yes.
become natural for her. But as you said, you manipulate your mindset, you manipulate your environment. I call it stacking the deck or increasing the likelihood.
Yeah.
What can you do in your environment to increase the probability that you're going to see more humor, experience more humor, whether that is something that's tangible, whether it's something digital, whether it's another person. Be conscious about the people you surround yourself with, because there's always that person who brings joy when they enter the room, and then there's other people who bring joy when they leave the room. If you are filled
Yes.
in a room with people who are sucking the joy out of everything, it's really hard to have that positive mindset. And so be more selective about who you're spending your time with. And sometimes we're forced to be stuck with the negative people, but you can spend more time with the people who really bring you joy and laughter, and
Right.
spend more time with those people. I encourage people to become um, students of humor. There are so many ways that whether it's an improv class or a comedy class,
Yes.
contact me about my upcoming master class. It's like the
Yes.
keys. There's books. There's an association called the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, puts on an annual conference, and they have
Are
actually.
they still doing that conference? I was going to ask you about that.
They are. And next May, it's in San Diego. They now have a 3-year humor academy where people can do a deep dive. The first year is kind of the art and science. The second year is application. And the third year, which I've been teaching for 15 years now, is humor and leadership. And so, we delve much deeper, but we have just scratched the surface today. There is so many more things that we could talk about, but stretch yourself a little bit. Step out of your comfort zone, not to the point where you're being inauthentic, but maybe coax yourself into asking the person at the grocery store, what's the funniest customer you've ever had, or seeking humor from another person, and then coaxing yourself to share that story with somebody else, and grow your repertoire, but step out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yes.
Manage the risks. You want to make sure you have rapport. You want to be in the right context, because what works, over
Right.
drinks isn't what you can share in the
Yes.
the psychological safety. All of these things come into play, But if you use it intentionally and consistently, and just remember that rule, more important to see funny than be funny, you're going to do great.
Yes, that is great. So what's next for you? And this will wrap up. This, how fast was this hour? Boom.
Oh,
Blink
it's
of an eye, blink of an eye. So, Karyn, what's next for you? Books, programs, speeches. What's coming up that you can tell us about?
Um, well, I've been doing for a couple of years now this master class. I offer it several times a year. It's an 8-week program, and we go into connection, into conflict, into storytelling, and every kinds of things. It's tools that coaches and leaders and speakers and other people who need to listen for a living would benefit from. What I just launched, and if somebody's interested, reach out, Karyn at Karyn Buxman. My contact information is on the Linktree QR code. Um, is now a monthly mastery that will continue because I've had so many people after the master class say, what's next? And
Yeah,
so this is going to be an opportunity to join in community and to just have monthly conversations. It's going to be educational and entertaining. And we just keep the conversation going because this is, relatively speaking, this is a new field of applied and therapeutic humor. And
very
so
cool.
there's much, much to learn.
Well, Karyn, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you for the work you do as a comic and as a leader.
Yeah.
I know how much this is needed now more than ever. If there was ever a market for funny, now is the time. I'm just saying we need it. So thank you. And now I can count you in my friend base and my circle of
Absolutely.
amazing thought leaders. If you ever come to Philly, we'll connect for sure. I'm trying to think if I'm doing NSA, I'm doing Dre invited me to do the Michigan chapter.
Oh,
We're gonna
I've
do
spoken for them. You will love them. You
well,
will.
if they're like him, Dre is just a gift. He's just beautiful. So I think December, I'm speaking for the Michigan chapter about humor in speaking. And then Philly chapter in October, my friend Chip Chantry and I, he's a wonderful comic, we do a module. Do you guys have a speakers academy for your NSA chapter?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for we're the humor kids for our Philly NSA chapter. So, but like we've talked about, this is something you need to focus on it, you need to practice. The more you use it, the better you get. I didn't even think I could speak in public, and now not only am I speaking in public, I'm standing on a comedy stage and people pay me to do it. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is. It is. It's humor
Oh
by
my
choice,
gosh.
not chance. Humor by choice.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sending you a big hug. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Big hugs all around. Lysandra, thank you for posting in the chat. September 25th, we got that big program in person. I hope to see you there. We're going to end our recording and then we're going to start the after party.